The debacle of the debate between Biden and Trump is unquestionable. The disaster that was shown to the world is very, very difficult to manage right now. And one thing that we should be aware of is that the debate is not whether Joe Biden performed adequately at the debate. The debate should be that people have been lied to for months about the health and about the ability to manage of the President of the United States. Not a small task to undertake. The inability of the President of the United States is the big elephant in the room. Let's look at some graphs that explain to us the challenges right now. Challenge number one, replacing Joe Biden. First, because according to what we are reading these days, it looks like he himself does not want to leave the presidential race, although the establishment is calling for new possibilities. However, it's not that easy. Number one, the donors. It's very difficult to believe that the donors that have spent millions on supporting Biden are going to go and suddenly continue to support any other candidate that the Democratic Party decides. Number two, the primary elections. The primary elections are going to show a divided party. Every candidate is going to present himself or herself as the solution by placing the blame or criticizing others, and that is going to show very significant cracks in the party. Additionally, what we need to be aware of is that the alternatives are not that easy. Vice President Harris is not an easy alternative. Why? Because the popularity of Ms. Harris is actually as low as Biden's. So what is the big problem? The big problem is that if the Democratic Party decides to take Mr. Biden away and also Ms. Harris, it will be telling the world that they don't support the administration. So it's going to be exceedingly difficult for any other candidate to go out and debate on the merits of an administration that the party itself is not going to defend. But if they decide to go with another candidate, it's going to be very difficult to get enough donors to support the race into the end. In many of these cases, some of them are perceived as too moderate for the radical left, and in other cases, like the case of Mr. Newsom, it's seen as a candidate that will make the rest of the United States as California. Therefore, the problems of immigration, the problems of homelessness, the problems of the opioid crisis, the problems of fentanyl and lack of security, all of those will also come to the fore. So it's not easy. It's not easy to bring Miss Obama either, because she is not an experienced politician. So either you have candidates that are too moderate for the radical left, candidates that are too radical for the moderates, and candidates that are too unknown and cannot defend an administration in which either Ms. Harris or Mr. Biden are too unpopular. And Ms. Obama or Mr. Newsom may be perceived as candidates of the establishment, but with very little to show for in order to defend their policies. Very, very challenging. Let's go to the next graphs and see some of the elements that we need to understand. Why is there so much discontent in the United States about the economy? Number one, the economy is slowing down in the middle of an amazingly insane deficit spending program. And it's slowing down while the rest of the world is strengthening in this graph that you can see courtesy of JP Morgan. Let's go to the next graph, which also shows us one of the big problems in the other side of the pond. It's in the UK. In the UK, the Conservative Party is going to have an enormous debacle in the elections, according to the polls, despite very low unemployment. But The reason is because the Conservative Party decided to abandon the promises of Brexit and the policies of the Conservatives and the classic liberal policies of low taxes, management of the budget and entrepreneurship in order to pursue a very mainstream social democrat policy. And this is a lesson as well for the United States, because the Biden administration also decided to put forward as a key policy to try to bloat GDP with massive debt, massive taxes, and with printing money via deficit spending and monetization, like in the UK, and the debacle is likely to be phenomenal. Let's go to the next graph, which also shows us why there is discontent in the United States. In this graph, courtesy of Ned Davis Research, what we see is that immigrants account for all of the labor force growth since the pandemic. Is that a negative in itself? Not necessarily. However, it is a reality, and it's a reality that is logical to be generating a significant level of discontent in the citizens that were already part of the labor force in the United States. When it basically proves that the improvement in the labor force has been, let's say, quite uneven. Let's go to the next graph, which shows us another important factor, why people are so discontented with the Biden administration. Oh my God, consumer sentiment. Consumer sentiment is plummeting. Consumer sentiment is plummeting, and it's well below the 2019 level. And why is that? Higher inflation, higher taxes, a lot of spending that is going nowhere and is bloating debt, and weakening of the private sector. The wealth creators, families, and taxpayers are seeing themselves poorer despite an allegedly robust economy. And this also shows that bloating the economy with massive government spending doesn't improve the general sentiment of the population, and at the same time it worsens the elements that may radicalize the voters to decide to accept more radical policies in order to improve their own position. So the problem of the Biden administration has been fundamentally to ignore the signals that were coming from the streets and to think too much of what the mainstream media or some academics or some of the radical elite would believe would be the best for the economy. It ended up being negative for the average consumer. Let's go to the next graph. The next graph tells us a lot about that discontent as well. Record tax receipts, an economy that is growing, absolutely it is growing, but it's allegedly growing very strongly. These record tax receipts don't do anything because the outlays, the expenditures are rising much faster. And those outlays are rising to 24.9% of GDP, according to the Congressional Budget Office, in a period in which they don't expect either a recession or any problem in terms of the growth of the economy. So what that is basically telling you is that debt is bloating because of interest expenses and mandatory spending added to a discretionary spending that is not helping at all. The problem of the deficit in the United States is a spending problem. So if what they are promising is more taxes and more spending, this enormous debt problem is going to bite the consumer midterm with higher inflation, higher taxes, lower growth, lower real wage growth, lower real employment, or all of them at the same time. Keep defending freedom.
Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel, like my videos, leave your comments below, and keep defending freedom. Thank you very much.